everybody. Thank you for coming to the LCPA What If Science Fiction and Fantasy Forum for June. We're a monthly program, or we run programs once a month. Oh, I want to introduce Hobo Key. I'm Helen Hesterosa, and this is Hobo Key. She's my fellow coordinator, and she's also a docent, and she will be taking our guest speakers for a tour of the Library of Congress afterward. We are a monthly, hey Mark, we're a monthly program. We have science fiction and fantasy authors, artists, costumers. We have had so many different and wonderful people. I have some things in the back. I have a binder that shows some of our past speakers. We also have a Facebook presence, What If Science Fiction and Fantasy. You can join us there. Also, we're part of the LCPA, which is the Library of Congress Professional Association. And it's a really great organization, staff organization, and we put on these monthly programs, and there are a whole lot of other programs sponsored by the LCPA, as well as the Library of Congress, Asian American Association, and other organizations. So keep your eye peeled, because there are a lot of things happening here that are free and open to the public. Also, we've kind of become a partner with the Museum of Science Fiction. So if you go to the Museum of Science Fiction website and look at About, you'll see LCPA lecture series. If you click on that, they've got our current flyer, and they've got our list of upcoming programs. We have many talented people here today. Janet and Chris Morris, they're authors, they're publishers, they're multi-talented. But Walter RHEIN is he's also an author. One of his books is back on the table, Reader of ACHERON. And he's going to introduce Janet and Chris today.
Well, usually that's accompanied by a little bit of applause.
Yeah.
Well, when I heard Janet was coming here, Janet and Chris, I knew I had to come and I wanted the opportunity to come and introduce them. So I loaded my family up into our car, and we drove from Wisconsin. And I have to say, the first thing I've really enjoyed about Washington, D.C. is the traffic. It's a really great group of people out there. Nobody's in a rush. Every time you turn on your blinker, everybody gives you space. They stop their car, they wave, and they go, for you, sir. So it's really great.
That is fantasy.
So, yeah. So I met Chris and Janet on a webpage I run on Facebook, and I know some of you. Lori Myers is here from our Heroic Fantasy group on Facebook. Has anybody else? Can I see some hands? Anybody else know it from there? See, we have all these people who said on our group they're coming, and none of them. Only Lori shows up. Well, the great thing about being an author today, and for fans of that author, is it's really easy to get in contact with your writers. Janet and Chris both contribute regularly on our Facebook page. And we like to continue this conversation. We love to hear everybody's responses to our works, and it really helps us see what the strong points are, and give the readers back what they want to hear. So we would encourage all of you to go on to Heroic Fantasy. It's just called Heroic Fantasy on Facebook. We have a webpage called heroicfantasywriters.com. Janet often does, and Chris often do interviews on that page. So it's just a really fun way to interact with your favorite writer. I think that's about all I wanted to say. So I had the opportunity of working on the Reader of ACHERON with Chris and Janet, and I found them to be the best editors, the best publishers I've ever worked with. As a writer, every time you write a manuscript, there you go. As a writer, every time you write a manuscript, you know there's some weak spots. And I've worked with other publishers, and I've sent in the manuscripts, and they've identified totally different areas that they thought were weak spots and were wrong. But with Chris and Janet, it was always the points that I thought, okay, this needed some work. So it's been a pleasure working with these two. Well, we at least think the same way. So I don't want to waste any more time. I know this is the main event here. So now to present social reconstruction through heroic fiction, the role of literature in envisioning our future, is Chris and Janet Morris.
I'm going to start this because Chris is going to read, and I'm a terrible reader, so reading out loud is definitely not what you want to hear me do. Heroic fiction has been my favorite form since I was 5 years old, and my parents read me ancient mythology, Shakespeare, myths. So I've always been interested in it. And what I've come to understand over years of study in the area and reading widely is that heroic fiction is the way we carry forth common values from one generation to another. It's how we say who we are and what we believe and what we care about. And in the 20th century, with 180 million people killed in war alone in that century, there's been a rise of the anti-hero. People who are much more interested in thieves and bad guys who do well, and television and movies have reinforced that. And the hero of ancient fiction, the guy who is special, who triumphs over all, who makes a difference, is almost something we've lost our faith in. The idea that one person can make a difference. So we have a lot of fiction right now that is anti-heroic in character, but there is a resurgence in heroic fiction and fantasy, because science fiction and fantasy requires someone to have an epiphany moment, have a realization, have an intellectual stake in what's going on. The hero believes in something greater than himself, and he's willing to sacrifice for that goal. And those are really important basic drivers in a story. Why does it bother me that there's a lot of anti-heroism today? Because we do what we're trained to do. And if you spend hundreds of hours playing a video game where you kill the little brown things and they get back out and you kill them all again, you start to have a different sense of who you are and why you're here than we would want to have in a world where individuality is prized. Because what you're killing isn't real, it doesn't matter, it doesn't stay dead, it comes back. So the counter to that is really in a resurgence of heroic fiction. And we've been writing heroic fiction off and on since the mid-70s. And we've written a biographical novel about a great ancient hero, a Hittite king, who at the time we wrote it was not well known, that was very well received. We've written our heroic fantasy series, The Sacred Band, since '79. It's actually when I wrote the first story. And there are heroes in there that, Laurie's nodding, there are heroes in there that some people really love, and they follow their careers, and these people grow up, and they become deeper. They have more to say. These characters are articulate, and it makes a difference in your life. If you are reading something that suggests that you can be important, that you can make a difference, that what you feel and what you do is going to help change the future, rather than just going along and feeling that if you can blow up enough people, somehow that'll make a difference. I mean, that's not the difference that Americans should want to make. In writing heroic fiction, we always choose a hero who's somewhat conflicted. We don't do the perfect person because, first of all, there's the Marvel superheroes and they're already doing that. But more than that, a person who has nothing internal to struggle against, who isn't trying to become better, who doesn't have flaws and faults that he overcomes in the process of becoming heroic in other people's minds, isn't really a hero. It's the hero who changes himself. That's the hero that you want to be. Because we have this dystopian sense of ourselves, people are turning more and more to fantasy. The real world doesn't seem to offer us the opportunities that we want. And yet, if the fantasy is written well, you can bring back those values and make your own life better and do more and be more than you otherwise thought you could be. So, although there's nothing sickly sweet about our characters, and our historic characters do things that modern political correctness wouldn't approve of, they are right for their periods. If they're Greek heroes, they take slaves. They kill other people routinely and are happy about it. That's their job. That's what they do. Sexuality is different in ancient times than it is now. Sex was a behavior, not an ideology. Your sense of who you are and what you are, your cohesion to your unit, your loyalty, your strength of purpose, your character. These are the things that drive these kinds of stories and have done since the Epic of Gilgamesh. Because myth is so deep in us, there's something called the monomyth that Joseph Campbell well described, which is a single mythic set of values and behaviors that multiple cultures have adopted without inheriting them from one another. All the cultures that have come up to any degree of civilization had a society of gods, had a society of devils and demons, had temptations, had people overcoming great odds. And the monomyth begins with usually somebody pretty ordinary having a call to duty. And that call to duty is what begins the heroic saga. And if you look up monomyth anywhere on Wikipedia or anywhere else, you'll see that we as a culture of human beings, whether we're an Asian culture or an American culture or a British culture or a Norse culture, everybody has created this method of organizing thought into story form to create a cohesive unit that cares about one another. So I'm going to let Chris read first from I the Sun, and I'll just set it up. Suppiluliuma has a long name. He was the first great king of the Hittite Empire in 1380 BCE, and he took his nation from a small country that had been attacked too many times, overrun too many times, into a great empire that stretched to the gates of ancient Egypt. And in the 50s, some tablets written by this guy, in first person, were discovered, and there was enough of them for me to be able to pierce together from the existing scholarship of the day this story of this king who had 3 queens, 46 kids, made 24 of them kings, and got Tutankhamun's widow so nervous that she asked him to send her a son when her husband died. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
There is a man who stands always on my horizon, large, cloaked, formidable. I have seen only his back. Over the years, that back has preceded me on occasion, dropping clues for me to read when I come to where he has passed. I have never been able to catch him, though I am coming closer. He has been in my dreams before every moment of crisis, for every tumble onto truth that has ever befallen me. Striding away his shoulders like a second horizon, I know that when I overtake him, I will have what it is that has eluded me over the years. Then I will learn a thing. Then I may truly say that I have done it. Now I am still following. Last night I was able to see that he wore sandals and their soles were worn. But he is getting dark. When I first saw him, he was bright and shining. The great king Arnuwandis, my father, had just died. I sat atop the rock sanctuary while the moon rose, looking down on the mausoleum's stone house, its grounds alight with mourners' torches, as they had been for 13 days. I moved only to hunt or to elude the machete, the great king's body troops, whom my mother periodically sent to search for me. Otherwise, I sat below the black eagle's nest, and we watched the ashes of Arnuwandis receive the adulation he had never been accorded in life. They loved him for dying. Their relief was a palpable thing, and that grieved him. So their grief was real enough. The black eagle screeched and flapped as I snuck, hunched up, to my hideaway. I was due for my manhood ceremony this year, and at 14 was barely able to fit into the crevice I had found 5 years past. What Superlilium as his life story did for us is what we try to do for readers of our fiction. Bring the heroic spirit to life, write tales of those who achieve greatness, whether or not history ever records their names. In Twelfth Night, Shakespeare's Malvolio says, "Be not afraid of greatness. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, some have greatness thrust upon them. Thy fates open their hands, let thy blood and spirit embrace them." And so, taking that advice to heart, we are not afraid. And neither are you, or you wouldn't be here today. To embrace greatness is to change the world. Your world can be changed only one hero at a time. Whether your heroism is demonstrated on the playground or the battlefield, the boardroom or the bedroom is not important. The determination to create a better society rather than a better worsening one is critical to us as a free people and as an evolving species. We write about war, freedom, love, loyalty, passion, and determination, conscience, because human life is defined by these qualities. We always write about men and women who reach beyond themselves, who find the strength to accomplish what others dare not try, because these are the deeds that change society for the better. Next, we're going to read a little from Beyond Wizard Wall, but Janet might have a few comments.
I thought I had another Eye of the Sun section.
No?
Okay. Yeah, I'll comment on Wizard Wall, and then you can read from it. Beyond Wizard Wall is one of the Sacred Band of Stepsons series. Sacred Band of Stepsons started innocuously enough. I was at a science fiction convention, and Bob Askren had done one Thieves' World volume, and he asked me on the podium, would I write for the next one? And because you always want to be gracious, I said, oh, sure. And he says, well, you know, it's a town that is the actual armpit of fantasy, and these characters have to be gruff and rough and tough, and the government is flimsy. There's every kind of problem you can imagine, and we want this to be dark. So there wasn't much dark fantasy at that time, and I said, are you serious? Because that's, of course, with Eye of the Sun, the sort of thing we had been doing. So he said, yes, and I said, okay, and that created Tempest. And Tempest styles himself like an ancient king. So it's Tempest the Black, favorite of the storm god, Tempest the Obscure. When we meet Tempest, he's at his lowest ebb. He's all by himself, sent down from the capital to see whether there was any hope to make the local ruler into something more. He has a lot of enemies, and he has to be pretty scary to keep them at bay. So he kicks a little butt, and he kicks a little more. And about this third story in, the Sacred Band comes to town, and the leader of the Sacred Band is a priest, and this priest is a eunuch, and this priest eunuch wants to serve with Tempest. And by the end of the story, he's died, and Tempest has inherited the first Sacred Band. Now, Sacred Bands are historical. the first known sacred band was put together by Pelopidas in about 370 BCE. Plato recommended the formation of sacred bands because the biggest problem in ancient Greek warfare was desertion. People threw down their swords, their shields, and ran like hell. And it's hard to fight. If you're taking 30,000 guys into the field and half of them leave and the other guy still has 30,000, you're in trouble. So what they did this by putting together, they built a gymnasium instead of making the guy who wants to be commander find a way to fund his particular private army that he then brings to Athens and they don't have to pay for it. Thebes put together a program that created sacred band pairs, male-male pairs, younger, emerging young men paired with adults, and the older fighters and nobles would take these boys and train them up. They were responsible for their education. They would have to buy their panoplies and their horses and their chariots when they got old enough. And there was a very loving relationship, which was that Greek sexuality is different from our sexuality today. And these bonds between these young men and these older men were meant to be strong enough to keep one from deserting so that the other would not see cowardice in his beloved or his lover. And bringing the sacred bands into something like the thieves' world milieu, where no one was loyal to anyone, where no one trusted anyone, where there was no action except for personal short-term gain, created the Sacred Band series, which we then spun off and now is 9 books. The big Sacred Band novel. We just reissued the Beyonds, Beyond Sanctuary, Beyond the Veil, Beyond Wizard Wall in larger editions. We took a 77,000 word book and took it to 101,000 words. So Chris is going to read to you from the office cut of Beyond Wizard Wall in Sacred Band.
This is Tempest on one of his more brooding days. Woe betide the soul who loves too much, wants too much, dares too much. Soon now comes the hour of doom for some, victory for others. If I didn't recall that once I'd cared so much, I wouldn't care at all. What matter who triumphs on any day or who tumbles from grace? Life always ends in death, and struggle spends itself against tomorrow. This empire is dissolving, and not a festival, nor a change of emperor, nor 100 oxen sacrificed on every hill will forfend the coming hecatombs of war and bloodbath. So why bother with this deadly sally in the face of obliteration? Assassinate one sovereign, usher in another, no difference. This empire's storm god is gone, and with him a people's future. One look around confirms it. All that remains is to save myself and my stepsons, to fight on other days. And fight our heroes will for freedom of the human spirit, for a chance at life, to fight on other days, the battle of your choice, of the body, the heart, or the soul, as Tempest remarks later in our epic novel, The Sacred Band. Also in The Sacred Band, an ensemble cast of humans and demigods and goddesses and witches and sorcerers, young and old, mortal and immortal, including a ghost horse, face trials of heroic proportions. Some meet those challenges, some fall by the wayside. Part historical fantasy, part Homeric epic, the men and women, boys and girls of the Sacred Band of Stepsons bring us into their world and share their love, their courage, their doubts and fears with us. Here is Randall, the sacred band's warrior mage, on a mission to test the staunchest soul. No one had asked the Riddler or Nico if Randall should do what he does tonight. He knows Strat and Critias well enough to be sure of that. These two labor to protect their commander and Nicodemus, both wounded by ineluctable forces no simple fighter understands. But Randall has a glimmer, and what he sees, he fears, the Dream Lord. The only way to face a problem is straight on, so the stepsons had taught him. Tempest lived that maxim, Nico followed in his commander's footsteps, and Randall, too, must find always the strength that courage needs. Crit had asked him, never looking Randall in the face, to do this for Nicodemus, get 2 keys out of the Mage Guild that 3 boys have lost there. Simple. Go in, get the keys, and live to bring them out again. There are too many heroes in the sacred band these days, all trying to save one another. After whatever happened on the Chironian battle plain, Randall didn't argue that the keys were meaningless to Ascalon, regent of the 7th sphere, who could twist eternity to his will and make reality itself a different shape. Or to angry fates, if any such roamed here. But Critias asked, and Randall must rise to the occasion, to the challenge. He belonged to Tempest's sacred band, body and soul. His oath to his former left side leader Nicodemus, to Tempest, to the stepsons, was on the line. So down he swept, decided, a great black eagle of a man, wings fighting air, updraft rushing by his keen eagle's ears, wings slowing his descent, making order out of chaos as the wind skirled. He dropped like a stone from heaven. Crit had sent a contingent here, and they'd broken out some windows with their crossbows, got in the gate, but couldn't breach the mansion's wards. Randall will or die trying. To the death, with honor, for his one-time partner Nicodemus, who wouldn't even speak with him or meet with him, because the stepsons asked it, because the sacred band was the best that a man could do. Try your damnedest in the face of everything. Never falter in your loyalty or betray your oath. Live and die, shoulder to shoulder, back to back, for the honor of serving by your partner's side, for the glory of dying by your partner's side. Honor and glory meant everything to these men. And whatever else Randall might be, he was a man, and one of them, and bound to them, howsoever long his life should last, and proud to be so. Heroism as its own reward is at the center of the Heroes in Hell series. And its newest volume, Poets in Hell. Poets from humanity's history vie with each other to win Hell's greatest poetry prize, where no trick is too dastardly for the damnedest poets of all time. Here's an excerpt from Words by Chris Morris. In the beginning was the Logos, the Word. In the beginning come always the words. Words are the mortar of the mind. Look you, J, the Yahwist, first author of the Old Testament, exhorted empty air, waving her hands about her on a blasted heath encircled by dark and cold. As in ancient times, this command brings light out of darkness, souls out of nowhere. All the heath fills with them, the detritus of the damned, singing and keening and rhyming aloud at the top of their lungs, each trying to outshout the other. the prolix, the wordy damned of perdition. Here are the teeming illiterati, the poor poets of pride and ignorance, angry and bleating like sheep at the altar, romancers of death, hoping for slaughter, dreaming of surcease. Jay would give them peace if she could, but she couldn't. Peace was oblivion. Oblivion was escape, and escape unattainable in hell. Death could be had, and cheap, but never lasted long. No sinning soul could win its way to heaven's grace. Look you, Jay called a second time aloud, and 1,000 heads turned her way. 1,000 mouths clamped shut as she began to tell her tale to their minds' eyes. Invariably, these words are her signal to infernity that she is ready to begin. Inevitably, those words summon not only story, but the deceiver, a lord of hell himself. Sensing joy, incensed by pleasure, now comes Satan, white-winged and glorious amid his host of fallen angels, circling to land, streaming intolerance and wrath on all the fools below, who howl the more. Down swept Satan and his 5 stalwarts, surrounding Jay in a buffet of wings, smelling like salvation. Bodies for gasping on hot nights under starshine. Ruination in infernity was their allure. Not boys or girls, but more than either. Encounters with great Satan's cohort had brought not only Eve, but Jay to heel before. She tried to close her nostrils to their perfume, avert her eyes from their magnificence. Each of the 6 carried a sack. In those sacks might be the prizes most desired by the thousands gathered here. But as Jay watched with covetous eyes, all 6 sacks disappeared. Her heart sank. She had to know. "Infernal Majesty," spake Jay, "have you heard my plea and brought them? All these faithless self-aggrandizers seek only what I hope you have in your sacks. And more beggars await behind them. They will pay any price, commit any sin, no matter how foul, to get what they came for." "Get salvation," scoffed Samael, the angel of death, most beautiful and deadly of Satan's warriors, cast down by an angry God. "Not for them, not ever. Torture, yes, as suits their passions. Punishment, always befitting their crimes. But you know that, Jay, yet you ask this favor for such rabble? You seek to aid these pustules of soul, these walking pots of stupidity mixed with arrogance, these insatiable nobodies who lust for fame? What do they want, all these self-anointed bards who seek to win our poetical contests? Don't they know the winners already are decided?" "What do they want?" Jay repeated, aghast that Samael did not know. "Not their soul salvation, mighty Samael. Neither forgiveness nor manumission. Words. Words immortal. Words of joy. Words of grief. Words of power. Words of penance. Words of passion. Words beyond their ken. Words to fill their mouths. Words to disguise. Words to make an idiot sound wise. Words they don't already know. Words they'll never understand. And a pronunciation guide so none will hear how ignorant they are when they speak the words of others." "I'll give them words of death," offered Samael. "Words of pestilence, to rival error, plague god of Babylon. Words to rot them in their boots. Words of Silence, Samael. His infernal majesty, the greatest fallen angel, raised a hand which Leonardo would have envied. I digress. Despite Satan's clever plan, and all the gods of hell, humanity's love for one another and hopes of escape or forgiveness makes our heroes strive ever onward, as heroes do. Here is the beginning of 7 Against Hell by Janet Morris, from Poets in Hell. I am Diomedes, son of Tydeus. These poets in hell account me second best of the Achaeans, after pouty Achilles. How is that? I killed more Trojans than he upon Troy's battlefield, yet never committed hubris. I partnered with Odysseus on the night hunt. My Aristeia, my excellence in combat at Ilion was unsurpassed. I even stole the enemy's best horses. Although I was the youngest warrior king among the Argives, I won more than my fair share of glory. Poets through the ages extol my battle. Homer, Hesiod, Aeschylus, Colophon, Sophocles, Antimachus, Apollodorus, Virgil, Ovid, Pausanias, Dante, Marlowe, even the loutish William Shakespeare, barely a man himself, praised my valor. When Shakespeare's Whittle Marlowe recast Ovid's Elegia, he wrote of me. Tydides left worst signs of villainy. He first a goddess struck, then another I. Yet he harmed less whom I professed to love. I harmed a foe, did Diomedes' anger move. So why am I in new hell, you ask, sitting on this rise called the Devil's Mound above the infamous damned meadow, a sheep field boasting a clamshell stage where perdition's self-appointed greats come to outshout one another's verse? True it is that on the battlefield of Troy in a single day I killed Estinus, Hyperion, Abas, Politus, Xanthus, Tuon, and 2 of Priam's sons, Ecamon and Chromius. And I wounded Aphrodite, but at Athene's order, and attacked Apollo twice. Thus I became the only man to wound 2 Olympians in one day in that battle. Notwithstanding, the worst I ever did on my own account was to steal the Trojan Palladium, their statue of Athene, with my bloody hands. Yet without that theft, said the oracle, Ilion would never fall. So we took it, Odysseus and I, and this exploit brought Odysseus and myself not to Elysium, with her bright blue sky and starry nights, but to Tartarus, to Erebus, thence to stinking New Hell City, where the worst of the damned prey upon one another. This hell of the new dead is more proliferate than Achaea, vaster than all of Hades, and full of pitfalls as grave as the love of a faithless woman, or any woman, since faithless all will be. My Queen Aegilia proved that more than once. Even a man such as I, who founds 10 cities and is worshipped in his day and thereafter, can end up in Erebus or Tartarus, or worse. Thus here I am, with my fellow Epigone, sons of heroes accursedly forgetful of our valor. Until we drink the blood of earthly sacrifice, we don't recall our names, despite all that Mnemosyne, the waters of memory, can do to prompt us. So here I await a hero's coming. In New Hell's foulest park, while flocks of damned souls crowd and churn below me, hoping to find a patch of grass near the clamshell where the poetry contest will be held. No matter what you heard, it was Homer who in 7,000 lines told my Epigone's story, the tale of us 7 heroes, sons avenging our fathers' deaths upon all of Thebes, commencing, "Now, muses, let us begin to sing of younger men." What modern scribbler could vie with that? What thewless mincer down alleyways in darkest night, what tattooed and pierced and wild-haired oaf of little use could sing a song of heroes, since these but talk and heroes do.
Really good.
Okay.
Do we have any questions people would like to
Sure.
ask?
You're an awesome narrator.
Thank you.
Do you have any, audiobooks that you narrate?
I've just finished The Sacred Band, which is 22 and a half hours. Please buy it.
And you said that's available on Kindle.
Not yet.
It will be on Kindle's audiobook site, which is audible.com. And actually I have, Kindle has a very clever site for content creators and narration production talent to meet. And I have put a very nice version of one of the first stories Janet wrote that contained characters for Thieves' World, called An End to Dreaming.
To try to do an audiobook that syncs to the written word. So if you buy the book, right, you buy the ebook, and then you get the audiobook, your Kindle will keep your place for you, and you could switch from one to the other. They have to be exact matches. So we've been working, this is a big book, it's a 500-odd page book. So we've been working to get it perfect. But we have the book here available as a physical book. You can buy The Sacred Band on Kindle or on Nook if you prefer. But I would say within 3 months the audiobook will be ready.
Our process after we draft is to sit and read aloud. And until things are voiced, we don't let it out the door.
I mean, when I hear him, we'll discuss what we're going to do. Then I'm the faster typer, so I'll do the rough draft. And then he comes in, and I haven't even checked it, and we pulls up his chair, and we go through line by line. Every line has to read out loud. If it doesn't make sense when you hear it, we write it again until it does, if it's not clear. And when Walter said we're good at editorial, it's because we read every line aloud. And that's in your head. That's what you're doing. You're reading every line aloud. So if we don't do that, then things can get pedantic, they can get confused, they cannot carry the meaning that you have in mind. And for this kind of fiction where every word is critical and there's nothing extra, we really have to do it. But you can see why I try not to read. Nobody can compete. I can't compete with that. So. There's Outpassage. Outpassage didn't get any play, which is too bad because it's. This was our attempt to take the heroic model forward into a modern setting. And it is just a really fun book, and it's really quick. And it's a ranger.
If there's no more questions, I'll read it.
Yeah, if there's no more question to read it. But it's a male ranger and a female ranger. And there, of course, you can't be a female ranger today. You can't go to ranger school. So that's one of the differences, that we have a female ranger and an executive female. And
how long does this process take then if you're reading everything that's written? I mean, how long does it take you to complete a 500-page book?
8 months, maybe a year, depends on the book.
Actually, some faster than others.
But define complete.
To get to the...
By this time, we've gotten pretty good at it. So.
We can, it depends on how long how long you're going to work on it any one day. Anybody here who writes knows that by the third day you've got an endorphin roll, and it goes really easily until you stop for 3 days, in which case you have to start all over again and pull yourself up the hill chemically. But once you get your endorphins going and the book starts to roll on its own, it's a matter of just how long can you sit there before you're going to completely expire. You can only do so much and really have attention. It's very much like recording music. You have 3 hours of prime critical attention. After that, you're fooling yourself.
And you have to feed the dogs.
And you have to feed the dog. You have to buy groceries just like everybody else. And you go to the store and they're in your head and they're looking around. You live with the characters.
More questions?
More questions?
Me.
Oh, good.
Have you ever had to rein them in? Have they ever, like, has Tempest ever?
But that's what you pray for.
You-
That's
you-
what you want.
Yes, you want that. The first time Tempest saw the White House, he says it's kind of small, isn't it? It's a different culture.
Another question?
You said the audiobook's coming out. Well, what else are you guys working on?
What else did he say?
What else are we working on?
We're working on, well, I'm doing Recess of Thrace. Or we're doing Recess of Thrace. And Recess of Thrace is highly underrated. But the reason Odysseus and Diomedes went on the night hunt was because Athene got to them and said, Recess of Thrace is coming with thousands at his back. And if he lives to fight tomorrow and raises his spears, he's going to change the course of the war, and the Greeks won't be able to win. So you have to go tonight and get into the camp and kill him. So that was the whole reason for the night hunt. They had to get the watchword, they had to get past the guards, and they did. Diomedes stabbed him, and they stole the white horses that he brought. His mother was Calliope, and she prevailed on the gods to let her resurrect him, but he was confined to an underground silver cave, like a silver mine, for many years. And he's a lost mythic character, except for Heros Equitans in the areas that he was worshipped after he died.
And became a cult.
And became a cult. He's a full-blown Greek hero cult guy. And so I love Greek hero cults, and we're doing his story because he gets out. In our story, he gets out of the cave, and he can't really remember everything right away, so that slowly feeds you the backstory as you go through it. So we're writing that, and we're doing one more Sacred Band book, which is going to be a Skiamaki, which is a battle with shadows, which after, in the Sacred Band, the big battle is against Meridian, and they win it. But when they win it, that turns Meridian, the place, which is the land of dreams, completely loose with nobody to control it. And strange things start to happen. And so we have to do that to finish that cycle. So we're doing that.
I'm also back in the music business now. So.
We're doing music. Good hold the music up. So we basically have 3 books stacked up.
What happens is that if a character deserves it, and you keep them in mind. They keep you in mind, as a matter of fact, and whatever you're doing, you begin to regard it from multiple aspects, determined by the sort of hero you need for that situation, or the one that just happens to say, yeah, the White House is kind of small, isn't it? So you look through the eyes of the character. It's a trained faculty, and I would encourage, what we're trying to do is train everybody to think like heroes. And because what we need now is not so many demagogues, but people who in their daily lives are being brave and proceeding with more uncertainty than I can remember in my lifetime.
Everybody, will you join me in thanking
It's been an honor. We are honored.
We're honored to be here.
you?